I leaned back against the cool leather of my office chair, the city skyline glittering beyond the glass wall like a jewelry box tipped over. My silk blouse still held the faint warmth of the afternoon sun, and the espresso on my desk had gone cold, untouched. I should have been reviewing contracts, but instead, I kept staring at the phone buzzing insistently beside me. "Don't forget Christmas dinner, Emily. We're counting on you." The group text from my family glowed across the screen. Counting on me, the same phrase I'd heard every December since I was old enough to hold a spatula. Not because I wanted to be the chef of the holidays, but because no one else would lift a finger if I was around. I swallowed the familiar bitterness, pressing my thumb against the edge of the phone until it hurt. They had no idea. No clue about the life I had built while they laughed, ate, and took me for granted in kitchens that smelled of cinnamon and exhaustion. The irony wasn't lost on me. The woman they thought of only as their holiday cook was now the one running a firm that catered to billion-dollar deals.
They never asked about that.
They never saw me beyond the apron. But this year was different. This year, I had already booked a flight, not home, but away. And for the first time, I would not be at that table, sweating over turkeys and pies. Let them pie was 22 the first time I realized Christmas wasn't about family togetherness in my house. It was about labor. My labor. The memory is sharp, like the sting of onion fumes in my eyes. My mother, Linda, stood in the doorway with her wine glass, laughing with my aunts, while I balanced 2 heavy roasting pans in the oven. My younger brother, Jason, lounged on the couch in front of the TV, a half-empty plate of appetizers resting on his stomach. "Emily," my mom called out without looking at me, "don't forget to baste the turkey every 30 minutes. And make sure the mashed potatoes are lump-free this time." Her words weren't cruel, just careless, like commands tossed at the family maid. I remember pausing, spoon in hand, my heart pounding with a mix of humiliation and anger. My hands were slick with butter, trembling as I scraped a stubborn pan. No one asked if I wanted to sit, laugh, or enjoy the holiday like everyone else. When I protested, just once, my father's response cut deeper than any carving knife. "Don't be dramatic, Emily. You're good at this. Everyone appreciates your effort." But appreciation never came. Only expectation. That night, when the last dish was scrubbed and the counters gleamed, I slipped into my childhood bedroom, chest tight, eyes burning. On the nightstand sat a small silver locket my grandmother had given me before she passed. Inside, folded carefully, was a handwritten note. "You are more than what they ask of you." I held that locket until dawn, my fingers tracing its cool edges. It felt like a secret weapon, a reminder that I was allowed to want more than servitude disguised as tradition. The very next morning, still smelling faintly of cloves and bleach, I filled out applications for graduate programs across the country. I didn't tell anyone. Not my mother, not my father, not even my best friend. When the acceptance letter from New York landed in my inbox weeks later, I made my choice in silence. I would leave the kitchen. I would leave the weight of their expectations. And I would find a life that belonged to me. That decision, small, quiet, invisible to them, was the first spark of freedom. New York did not welcome me with open arms. It shoved me, tested me, and demanded proof of every ounce of strength I thought I had. I arrived with 2 suitcases, a used laptop, and my grandmother's silver locket tucked under my blouse like armor. At first, the city swallowed me whole. My apartment was a shoebox with peeling paint and radiators that hissed like snakes at night. I juggled classes during the day and shifts at a bakery until 2 a.m. The hours left me dizzy, my feet blistered, my fingers cracked from kneading dough. But I learned to survive, 1 cup of cheap coffee at a time, 1 subway ride after another. What I didn't expect was a mentor. Her name was Margaret Whitfield, one of my professors. She was sharp-eyed, elegant, and had a voice that could silence an auditorium. When she noticed me scribbling ideas in the margins of my notes, she asked me to stay after class. "Emily," she said, sliding my notebook toward herself, "you don't just have ideas. You have vision. Have you ever thought of building something of your own?" Her belief in me became a lifeline. She introduced me to circles I never would have entered on my own: women entrepreneurs, investors, creators who lived on courage and grit. They didn't care about my last name or how well I roasted a turkey. They cared about my determination. The first venture I tried was laughable, catering corporate lunches out of my tiny apartment kitchen. I burnt half the trays and once delivered sandwiches in the rain, my clothes soaked through, shivering as the receptionist looked at me with pity. Still, it was mine. My work. My failure. My lesson. Each misstep taught me something about discipline, about presentation, about resilience. Slowly, painfully, I improved. I landed my first big client, a boutique marketing firm that wanted weekly meal plans for its staff. It wasn't glamorous, but when they signed the check with my name on it, I cried all the way home on the subway. From there, I built momentum. Nights blurred into mornings. My apartment transformed into a command center of recipes, spreadsheets, and invoices. I learned to pitch, to negotiate, to say no without apology. And with every dollar earned, I tucked away the memory of my family's dismissive smiles. I posted carefully on social media, vague photos of city skylines, coffee mugs, the occasional blurry shot of my desk. I wanted them to know I was alive but not thriving. Not yet. I kept my success folded close, like the note in my grandmother's locket. Years passed, and what began as late-night hustling grew into something formidable. I wasn't just cooking anymore. I was managing contracts, scaling services, and eventually building a consultancy that advised major food brands. The woman who once cried over a sink full of dirty holiday dishes was now advising CEOs on multi-million-dollar expansions. Still, every December, the texts came. "Emily, you're in charge of Christmas dinner, right?" And every December, I flew home, put on the apron, and said nothing. Until the year I didn't. The year I finally skipped Christmas, the silence for me must have rattled them. Normally, I'd confirm my arrival weeks ahead, ask about headcounts, double-check who wanted pumpkin pie versus pecan. That December, I said nothing. Instead, I booked myself a quiet holiday retreat in the Berkshires, complete with a fireplace and zero obligations. Christmas morning, my phone lit up with frantic messages. "Emily, where are you? We're waiting for you to start the turkey. This isn't funny, Em. The whole family is here. You can't just abandon us." I smiled into my coffee, letting the steam warm my face. For once, they were the ones scrambling. A week later, when I returned to the city, the confrontation came. My parents and Jason showed up unannounced at my office. I was in the middle of reviewing a client proposal when my assistant buzzed in. "Your family is here, and they look upset." I took a breath, smoothed the silk of my blouse, and told her to let them in. The moment they stepped inside, their chatter died. My office wasn't extravagant by New York standards, but to them, it must have looked like a palace: high ceilings, glass walls, shelves lined with awards and contracts in sleek frames. On the side table, a sculpture from a Paris trip gleamed in the light. The walls carried subtle scents of leather and polished wood. Jason's eyes darted everywhere, wide as saucers. My mother's mouth opened, then closed. My father adjusted his coat, suddenly stiff, as though the room itself was questioning his authority. This is your office?" my mother finally asked, her voice thin. "Yes," I said evenly, leaning against the edge of my desk. "I run this firm. The one you've probably read about in the business section but didn't notice had my name on it." Jason gave a disbelieving laugh. "Wait, you? You're the owner?" I nodded. "Founder and CEO. Every deal that crosses this desk has my signature on it. The catering? The brand strategies? The partnerships with Fortune 500 companies? All mine." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the ticking of the antique clock on my shelf. I let it stretch, watching them take in the reality. For years, they'd seen me as nothing more than their kitchen workhorse. Now, standing before them, I was something entirely different: powerful, independent, untouchable. "You never said anything," my father murmured, almost to himself. "Would you have listened?" I asked, tilting my head. "Every time I tried to speak, you reminded me my value was in mashed potatoes and pie crusts." You never cared to ask who I was outside that kitchen. My mother's eyes glistened, though whether from shame or indignation, I couldn't tell. But why keep this from us? Because I didn't need your validation, I replied softly, my voice steady. I needed to prove it to myself. And I did. On my own. The weight of my words settled over them. Jason shifted uncomfortably, his usual smirk gone. My father looked away, jaw clenched. I straightened, smoothing invisible wrinkles from my skirt. So now you know. I am not your holiday chef. I am a woman who built an empire while you laughed over eggnog. And you panicked the moment I refused to play my role. The room seemed to shrink around them as the truth pressed in. For the first time in my life, they were speechless, and I was the one holding all the cards. I let them stand there a moment longer, absorbing the truth. Then I crossed the room, heels clicking against the polished floor, and poured myself a glass of water from the crystal decanter. My hands no longer trembled the way they had in my parents' kitchen years ago. I was steady now, deliberate. You came here today for answers, I said, turning to face them. So let me give you some. I'm not angry anymore, but I won't be treated the way I used to be. If you want me in your lives, the terms have changed. Jason scoffed, though his voice lacked conviction. Terms? You make it sound like a business deal. I met his eyes. That's exactly what it is. Relationships are agreements. And ours has been one-sided for far too long. My mother's face softened. Emily, we didn't realize. We thought. That cooking was all I was good for? I interrupted, my tone calm but unyielding. Exactly. And that ends now. I walked back to my desk, resting my fingertips on the mahogany surface. Here's what I need from each of you. I turned to Jason first. You've coasted your whole life, waiting for someone else to carry the weight. I won't enable that anymore. If you want a relationship with me, I expect you to pursue something real, work, education, anything that proves you're investing in yourself. No more excuses. His mouth opened, but I didn't give him space to argue. Then to my mother. Mom, you never lifted a hand in the kitchen because you believed it was beneath you. What I need from you now is respect. Not applause, not pride you put on display for your friends, but genuine respect for who I am, without comparing me to casseroles and pies. Her chin trembled. She nodded faintly, eyes darting to the floor. Finally, my father. The man whose voice had once crushed me into silence. Dad, you told me not to be dramatic, that my place was to serve. If you want me in your life, I need acknowledgement. I need you to admit you were wrong, that I am more than what you chose to see. The words hung in the air like thunder. He shifted, shoulders heavy, and for once, he looked smaller than I remembered. These are my conditions, I said, my voice firm, final. Not to punish you, but to protect me. If you can meet them, we can rebuild. If you can't, then this is where we part. The silence was thick, but I felt no guilt. Compassion, yes, but not guilt. I wasn't shutting them out. I was drawing a line that had been erased too many times before. My grandmother's locket pressed cool against my skin as if reminding me, you are more than what they ask of you. For the first time, my family wasn't in control. I was. For weeks after that confrontation, I didn't hear much. The silence wasn't hostile this time. It was contemplative. I think they were finally sitting with the weight of my words, deciding whether they could rise to meet them. Then, slowly, small changes began to appear. Jason called one afternoon, his voice uncertain but sober. I signed up for classes, he said. Business management. I don't want to be a joke anymore. For once, he wasn't defensive. There was humility there, almost fragile. My mother sent a letter, handwritten, shaky. She apologized not just for the years of burden, but for never seeing me as more than her kitchen stand-in. She wrote, I didn't realize how blind I was. I hope it's not too late to learn who you really are. And my father, it took him the longest. But one evening, he showed up at my office again. This time, no bluster, no coat of authority. Just a man holding his hat in his hands. I was wrong, Emily, he said, voice low but clear. You were never just dramatic. You were right to want more. And you've built something I couldn't have imagined. I'm proud of you." Hearing those words didn't erase the years of dismissal, but it cracked something open. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the possibility of it. I sat in my office that night, the city lights flickering like a million small hopes. My grandmother's silver locket rested against my collarbone, its weight both grounding and freeing. I opened it, reading the faded note again. "You are more than what they ask of you." She had been right all along. The girl who once shook with shame in a kitchen full of demands had become a woman who set her own terms. A woman who no longer cooked out of obligation, but chose when, and for whom, she would pour her love into food. That Christmas, my family learned what panic felt like without me. But more importantly, they learned who I truly was. And as for me, I learned the sweetest recipe of all: freedom, seasoned with self-respect. I was never just their holiday chef. I was the feast they never saw coming.